What's up, guys? Iceman here. So, the story I'm about to tell you is a bit intimate. Alright? It's a bit personal. And I wanted to do it justice. Granted, I don't know if I can. This bear attack is one of the ages. And I've told it before on this story. But it needs to be told again. But this time in a more authentic way. Alright. But before I get into it, if you guys will like this video, subscribe to the page, and pull that bell so you're notified next time I post a video. And blessings to my patrons. Links in the description below. So basically, her name was Aurelia. She was a beautiful young woman inside and out. She was about 26 years of age when this horrid incident took place. Now, I don't want to do her family a disservice, okay? I don't want to be disrespectful when and how I refer to them. So to put it lightly, let's just say that they were addicts. One of the two parents suffered from schizophrenia. The other was on various pain medications. And they were both addicted to substances. Aurelia was born later. She wasn't really expected, to my understanding. She had a subtle case of autism. She was somewhere on that spectrum. She was still able to drive a car and go to work. She worked at a local hardware store, which is where Brett met her. Now, Brett was a guy who was in his late 20s. I think he was 29 years old when he walked in there. And you know those guys that you hear about on the internet who go around and try to pick up women or whatever? Brett was one of those guys. He was kind of chiseled. He took testosterone. I think he took the gel kind for a couple of years. So his masculinity or whatever was heightened. Perhaps artificially, but it was heightened nonetheless. So his male drives and all that, if you will, were enhanced. He had tattoos running up and down his arms, those long sleeves of tattoos, even the ones that go up to your neck. His shaved head were cap. But nonetheless, he approached Aurelia at the hardware store in which she worked. He went up to the counter. And this girl was impressionable. She believed people when they would talk to her. she would believe them. The things they would say, she was gullible. All right. So when Brett approached her, the way that she looked into his eyes was like almost how a child would look into the eyes of a figure of authority. And I think that Brett took advantage of these aspects about her. But nonetheless, she gave him her number, and they mingled a little bit. Her parents didn't like him, of course. They didn't want her hanging out with him, which I think is why ultimately he planned that camping trip. It was somewhere on the outskirts of Montana. I can't remember where exactly. It wasn't too far from Yellowstone. The same place where she would go and walk her dogs. She would never have a leash on them. And there was even this one incident where she took notice to a bear. It was a grizzly. To my understanding, it was a sow. Fortunately, it didn't have cubs, but she would whisper to them and sing to them and dance around in the fields and all that. It was a bit eccentric, her way of being. Almost as though it was inspired by the Disney Channel or something. But nonetheless, she got close to one of these animals. And it pulled away from her, as if it knew there was something about her, you know? Something that wasn't quite... She wasn't like the other humans. And I think that, to a certain degree, a lot of these animals were capable of perceiving that. Like including her pets, for example. But she had a moment with a grizzly bear. And I don't know if she touched it, but she got really close. And she was speaking to it or singing to it. And of course, there was something just majestical about that incident that stuck with her. So, this whole thing, this camping trip, Brett, of course, planning it out. I think, as far as I see it, he just wanted to get alone with her. It was hard to get privacy. Her parents were always home. And they generally would keep a close watch on her. Granted, they did have their sufferings, where in their higher states of indulgence, they would kind of not think about her. So there'd be those sections in the day where they weren't quite there. And to my understanding, that's when this whole thing took place. In an episode such as that. So they go out to the woods, walk down some trails. Of course, she's dancing around. She's picking flowers and stuff and explaining to Brett what this or that is. Brett, of course, ignoring her for the most part. Just trying to cut to the chase, get the tent set up, get the night going. And she explained to him something about like a tranquil golden weed or something like that. She had these little plant books. And she'd memorize things. She had a great memory. But sometimes her facts were off and her numbers, but she was eccentric. But nonetheless. So Brett was setting up the tent. And Aurelia was kind of venturing off. Brett, of course, had one thing on his mind as far as I see it. Maybe I shouldn't talk. I mean, that was just my impression, all right? I don't really know. I mean, it just seems like, what the hell are you doing out there? What are you doing with this impressionable young female? You know what I mean? Now, obviously, there's something a little, I think her parents would say she's kind of like a teenager or something in the head. But Brett was setting up the tent, and Aurelia was venturing off. And she must have run into this cub. This grizzly cub. She was like singing or whistling to, I'm not really sure which. And she got closer to it and closer. And I remember she knelt down next to the thing and held her hand out. And to my understanding, she touched it on the nose. Now, I don't know if bears work the same way that rabbits or whatever else, where they can kind of smell the human on whatever they touch. I don't know if that's the case, but something happened because the mother bear was reluctant at first. It's like it didn't want to attack her. I mean, I think that in Yellowstone and the surrounding regions, they're so familiar with humans being around them that they generally just want to avoid them. Of course, it's common knowledge, like you want to avoid the cubs. The mother bear, it's like in the Bible, isn't it? With how protective they are of their cubs. Like they're going to attack you if you mess with them. But this sow was reluctant. But Aurelia persisted. There's something to do with the cub and how it pulled away from her when she touched it. Like even the cub knew that there was something wrong with it. That there was something wrong with that situation. So the cub pulled away, and Aurelia, I think, was emboldened by, I don't know, there might have been a sort of power complex going on there. Like, of course, even she, to my understanding, knew that these bears are creatures that shouldn't be reckoned with. I think it's just in her subconscious, Whether or not you act like that's the case or not, you just know that they're formidable, powerful creatures, and you gotta respect them and be cautious around them. And you have to respect their space. But similarly to like a dog or a cat or something, I think there was something that triggered in Aurelia's mind. I don't know, this is just speculation. But the bear, it pulled away and it emboldened the young girl, to my understanding. I could be wrong on this. But that's when she approached it again, when it tried to leave. And the mother sow ran up to her and did a bluff charge. But the girl still didn't back off. And she ended up getting mauled by the damn bear. There was an episode between the seeking of the cub and the mauling that the mother bear inflicted, where Brett took notice to the situation, and he would yell and yell and yell to Aurelia, but she wouldn't listen. He told her to back off, to come back, but somewhere in that, the mother bear mauled that young girl so bad. And Brett was watching it. You know, he was warning her. I mean, I don't really like him. I don't like the guy. All right, from what I know about him, I just don't. There's something really bothersome about it. But he did try to get her away from the damn cub. But then, somewhere in that, he ran away. So this girl that he met, I think like a week previous to the attack, did he lure her out there, or was it under her own consent? You know, how do you measure this stuff? I don't really know. But he took her out there. He set up the tent. And this whole thing unfolds the way that it does. And I remember just hearing about the attack. And it made me think of a time when my dog found a possum in our chicken coop, and it was chewing on it like this, like it was a football or something, and you could hear the bones cracking, like it was just making sure it was dead, you know. But the possum wasn't dead. In fact, it was gone the next day. But that's how this attack went. The mother bear, as far as I see it, it didn't want to do it, as far as I see it. It just wanted to neutralize the threat. And it just kept crunching and crunching and crunching. And they found that carcass the next day. And, I mean, it was disturbing. I don't know how long she was alive while it was doing its thing. I think she was struggling halfway through, which, of course, invigorated the animal. In that situation, to my understanding, you have to play dead when it's a mama bear. But, of course, I don't think Aurelia had any idea. But I might touch on this story in another video. I don't know if you guys are interested in hearing further details about that, but I mean, it's just, like I said, I did another video on it. But it's a crazy one. But let me know in the comments what you guys think about that situation. I don't know what could have been done differently to avoid the attack, you know, this and that. And like this video if you will. I'll see you soon with more chilling tales from the Iceman.